Hey guys, Up from the Depths back here once again to give you my very first initial thoughts on the latest Godzilla movie. It's crazy that just a few months ago we had -1, which gave us what many consider to be the pinnacle of the serious-minded thematic Godzilla films. And now here we are taking a complete 180 with Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. Now my expectations were modest going into this film. While I liked Godzilla vs. Kong for the amazing monster fights, I found the story around it to be merely fine, with one half, the side with Madison and Bernie, to be downright mediocre if I'm being generous. And because of this, I found the film to be a significant downgrade from the previous entries, which didn't bode well for the direction of the MonsterVerse, at least in my eyes. It's with this reason that I went into GXK with trepidation. I knew I would probably like the monster stuff, but I was prepared to once again be less enthusiastic to everything around it. Well, now that I've finally seen the film, I'm very happy to report that Godzilla x Kong exceeded my expectations. Not only is the monster action exceptional, but the human characters around it are actually pretty good. They've been stripped down to a small core group, which is a wise decision because it both allows the characters to stand out more while also keeping the story focused and simple. They aren't anything exceptional, but they do their job well, with a few, like Dan Stevenson's Trapper, are genuinely entertaining and bring a sense of lighthearted charisma to a film that unapologetically belongs to the monsters. They are what make this movie a blast for anyone who loves kaiju. There are so many monsters in this film, way more than I expected, and every one of them, from the title monsters to the minor ones, get a moment to shine. The star is of course Kong, who continues his journey of finding his place in the world. And I love his character. He has so much heart. He's just a good guy who wants to make friends and do the right thing. And he's also a straight up badass. He has so many show-off moments that remind you why he's such a beloved character. Godzilla, on the other hand, does admittedly feel more like a supporting character here, but he also gets plenty of awesome moments. He's just a straight up jerk, going around killing monsters to boost his stats, but that's such a Godzilla thing to do, which I love. It reminded me of Final Wars Godzilla, which is also a movie I love, so I dig it very much. And also, Mothra shows up, which was so cool. I didn't pay much attention to the marketing this time around, which I'm so happy I did because her appearance not only surprised me, but she plays a bigger role than I expected. It feels like she did more here than she did in King of the Monsters, and we get to see her awesome design and full clear lighting and everything, which was one of my minor criticisms of King of the Monsters. It was so satisfying seeing her back after it seemed like she was being left behind after the tepid response to that film. Now bring back Rodan too. And then there are the original monsters, all of which are welcome additions to the MonsterVerse. Scar King, while not quite as intimidating as King Ghidorah or Mechagodzilla, is a fun villain with a ton of characterization that makes him very entertaining to watch, and a good foil for Kong. And Shimo has a pathos to her that makes you sympathize with her. Zuko is also a sympathetic character. His relationship with Kong is initially very antagonistic, but it makes sense as to why, and the growing camaraderie between them is the emotional heart of the film, and parallels nicely with Eileen and Gia's. And between the classic and original monsters, it finally feels like the MonsterVerse is developing a roster of kaiju that will carry over into future films. Will we finally get to destroy all monsters of the MonsterVerse? Only time will tell. My only real complaints are that there are some narrative turns that I think could have been handled better, and it does take a little while to get going, even with the short runtime. And the score by Junkie XL is even more bland than it was in Godzilla vs. Kong. Had this film had a score with real thematic depth, like say, Bear McCreary's score in King of the Monsters, the movie would be significantly elevated. Flaws aside, the fact is that more than any movie I've seen in a really long time, Godzilla x Kong made me feel like a kid again, watching and rewatching those old goofy Godzilla VHS tapes in my room on a Friday night. My brain was bouncing off the walls of my skull during the final act. It was non-stop, beautifully choreographed kaiju carnage. There's just so much imagination in this movie that I can't help but love it. Is it flawed? Hell yes it is. Is it silly? You bet. Does it use a ton of narrative shorthand to get to the monster drama? Undoubtedly. But if you're a Godzilla fan who enjoys all the films to some degree, then these flaws should be nothing new. And when I remember how much of a good time I had watching this film, frankly, I just don't care. Perhaps best of all is that after a rocky attempt at establishing itself with King of the Monsters and Godzilla vs. Kong, it finally feels like the MonsterVerse has a solid foundation to build on. We have a core mythology, and we have an ever-building roster of monsters, all of which have defining, easily decipherable characteristics. There's a lot to improve on still, but with all that and what's looking like an enthusiastic response from audiences, the future of the MonsterVerse looks more certain than ever. And if it keeps giving me what I got with Godzilla x Kong, I'll be be there on opening day every time. So those are my very first initial thoughts on Godzilla x Kong. Like I said, I was surprised by how much I liked this movie, and I hope all of you have as much fun with it as I did. You can expect an official review once it comes out on Blu-ray, but until then, remember, stay safe and healthy, don't take yourself too seriously, and as always, long live the kings.